Iran sent a peace proposal. Trump read it, and then he said something that should concern every government on Earth. Do we want to go and just blast the hell out of them and finish them forever? Or do we want to try and make a deal? Those are not the words of a president who has made up his mind. Those are the words of a president who is holding two options in his hands and has not yet decided which one to pick. Iran moved. For the first time in this 64-day war, Tehran submitted a proposal that analysts are calling a genuine shift in position. It dropped one of its core preconditions. It offered to discuss its nuclear program. It proposed a pathway to reopening the Strait of Hormuz. A 14-point document sent through Pakistani mediators on Thursday night, landing in Washington by Friday morning. Trump's response? They've made strides, but I'm not satisfied. Deal or destroy? Those are the two options on the table right now. And the next 48 hours may determine which one gets chosen. Let's get you oriented, because to understand how significant this proposal is, you need to understand what Iran was saying just weeks ago and how far it has moved. When the U.S.-Iran ceasefire was brokered through Pakistan on April 8th, Iran's position was simple: stop the bombing. Everything else, the strait, the nuclear issue, could come later. When talks collapsed days later, Iran pushed nuclear discussions to the very end of a long, staged process. First, guarantees against strikes. Then, Hormuz negotiations. Only then, possibly, nuclear talks. Washington rejected that completely. And on April 13th, the U.S. imposed a naval blockade of Iranian ports, the most aggressive economic pressure move in years. 3 weeks of blockade followed. Currency collapse, oil storage nearing capacity, tankers seized across regions, mounting pressure. And then Iran changed its position. It submitted a 14-point proposal that, for the first time, offered to discuss the nuclear issue and dropped its demand that the blockade be lifted before talks could begin. That is a significant shift, and it was rejected within hours. So the question now is simple. What exactly does Washington want? And is there anything Iran could offer that would be enough? Here is where things get more serious. On the same night Iran sent its proposal, U.S. Central Command briefed Trump on new military options. Not theoretical plans, active, ready scenarios. Options reportedly include a short, targeted strike campaign designed to pressure Iran into concessions. Another option, physically securing parts of the Strait of Hormuz to reopen shipping. And a third, a direct operation targeting Iran's enriched uranium stockpile. So while diplomacy moved forward, military planning moved in parallel. That sequence matters because it suggests the decision is not between diplomacy and force. It may be about timing between the two. If strikes resume, this conflict becomes far harder to contain. Iran has had weeks to reposition, prepare, and adapt. Any new military action would not hit the same targets as before. Markets have already reacted. Oil prices surged on the mere possibility of renewed strikes. The signal is clear. Escalation will not stay regional. Now, let's break down what Iran actually offered. First, it dropped its demand that the blockade end before talks begin. Instead, it proposed simultaneous steps, negotiations alongside a gradual unwinding of restrictions. Second, it opened the door to discussing its nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief, something it had previously refused to do up front. Third, it signaled willingness to return to mediated talks through Pakistan. But key issues remain unresolved. There is no commitment to halt uranium enrichment, no agreement on missile programs, and control over the Strait of Hormuz remains a central demand for Iran. So while the proposal moved, it did not fully align with Washington's expectations. At the same time, signals from inside Iran have been mixed. Military readiness remains visible. Defensive systems were activated briefly around the capital. No official explanation was given. Meanwhile, economic pressure is intensifying. The blockade has significantly reduced shipping activity. Oil exports are constrained. And reports indicate Iran has begun reducing its own production to manage storage limits. That is not a sign of stability. That is a system under strain. And then there is the leadership messaging. Diplomatic channels are active. Outreach to regional partners is ongoing. But public statements remain firm, emphasizing control, resistance, and sovereignty. Two messages running at the same time. One pushing negotiation, the other reinforcing strength. Washington now has to decide which one it believes. Step back and look at the bigger picture. This is no longer just a regional conflict. The Strait of Hormuz remains a critical global artery. Disruptions here affect energy markets, supply chains, and economic stability far beyond the region. Shipping delays, rising costs, market volatility, all of it tied to decisions that have not yet been made. And there is a deeper layer, the nuclear question. Current stockpiles, enrichment levels, and verification mechanisms remain central to any long-term agreement. Without clarity on those points, even a temporary deal may not hold. So here is what we do not know. What conditions would make the proposal acceptable? Whether a revised offer is already being prepared, and whether the military options are leverage or the next step. Because both tracks are active, and neither has been closed. Here is where we stand. A proposal has been made, a response has been given, but the process is not finished. Diplomacy is still technically open, military planning is clearly active, and the timeline is tightening. The choice has been framed in very direct terms: escalation or agreement. But in reality, the outcome may depend on what happens between those two extremes. Right now, nothing is finalized, and until a clear direction is chosen, uncertainty remains the defining factor. The situation is fluid, the stakes are high, and the next move will matter more than anything that has happened so far. The world is watching what happens next.